Who are you?
Yeah, but still, you know what I'm saying. There ain't no reason to stay over at your house all the time by yourself.
After years of speculation, setbacks, triumphs, and the never-ending swirl of public opinion, the future of 1000 LB Sisters and Tammy Slaton's place in it has once again become the subject of heated discussion, with many viewers unsure whether the show will continue or if Tammy's extraordinary journey has reached its final televised chapter. But Tammy herself has now broken her silence to set the record straight, and in doing so, opened up a wider conversation about weight loss, fame, family, and personal identity, because while many reality shows are built on drama, exaggeration, and staged moments for the cameras, Tammy's story has been raw, messy, painful, and at the same time inspiring in a way that has made fans across the world invest deeply in her progress, her struggles, and her resilience. And that investment only grew stronger in the season 7 finale when viewers saw Tammy reach a life-changing milestone, finally being approved for skin removal surgery after her extraordinary weight loss of more than 500 pounds. A transformation so staggering that even longtime followers of weight loss reality programs like My 600LB Life were stunned, because it represented not just a physical transformation, but the fulfillment of a dream Tammy had clung to through years of immobility, near-death experiences, rehab, and despair. Yet even in such a moment of triumph, the question quickly arose: what comes next? Both for Tammy personally and for a TLC franchise that has become one of the network's most reliable sources of ratings, with some fans speculating that the show had run its course because Tammy had achieved her goal, while others argued that her new life after such dramatic weight loss was only the beginning of a new chapter worth documenting, especially when placed against the backdrop of ongoing chaos in Amy Halterman's personal life with her new relationship with Brian Laverne, a storyline that has left many viewers frustrated with what they see as Amy's lack of seriousness compared to Tammy's hard-fought growth. And it was against this swirl of rumor and doubt that Tammy recently spoke up, replying to a fan online who asked whether the show had been canceled by flatly stating, "No, they haven't. We are working on season 8. I don't understand why people keep posting fake news about us," a response that not only confirmed production, but also revealed Tammy's own frustration at the constant stream of gossip and misinformation that swirls around her life, a frustration she elaborated on by reflecting that while people might assume reality shows are glamorous, the truth is they are far from it, because every angle, every flaw, every mistake is captured and magnified. And the real weight she has carried has not only been measured in pounds, but in the burden of constant attention, whispers, judgment, and projection, with viewers often imagining they know her better than she knows herself. Something she admits was sometimes true, since she lost touch with her own identity amid the chaos of filming, hospital stays, and internet commentary, which is why she has now declared that this new season will be about reclaiming her voice, not as a project or a spectacle, but as a person who still dreams, still hurts, still grows. A powerful statement that resonated with fans who flooded her comment sections with relief, excitement, and encouragement. One noting, "Looks like we're getting season 8." Another observing that 1000 LB Sisters alongside the 90 Day Fiancé franchise is essentially TLC's bread and butter, and another insisting they better not cancel it. "It's one of the few shows I watch." A chorus of voices that demonstrates just how deeply Tammy's narrative has become interwoven with the lives of fans who see in her both vulnerability and resilience. And in many ways, the situation speaks to a broader truth about reality TV that, while producers may seek drama, the moments that resonate most profoundly are not the staged fights or gimmicks, but the deeply human arcs of struggle, failure, and redemption. And Tammy embodies that more than almost anyone else currently on television, with her near-death hospitalization in 2021, her stint in rehab, her gradual shedding of hundreds of pounds, and her final breakthrough moment of skin removal surgery, forming a hero's journey. narrative that no writer could have scripted better. And yet the irony remains that even as she achieves her goals, the spotlight only grows harsher, the opinions only louder, and the question of how much of her life she owes to cameras and strangers more pressing, particularly now that Amy has become increasingly divisive among fans due to her relationship drama, her sometimes erratic behavior on and off screen, and the perception that she does not bring the same authenticity or gravity to the show that Tammy does, leading some to suggest that Tammy should have her own spin-off focused solely on her new life, her continuing health challenges, and her personal growth beyond the shadow of her past. But whether the network goes down that route or not, Tammy's own words reveal a determination to take control of her story, to stop being defined by internet gossip, and to live for herself rather than for the projections of others. And that makes the promise of a season 8 especially intriguing, because it suggests not just more of the same weight loss narrative, but an evolution into something deeper. A chronicle of what it means to rebuild identity after decades of struggle, and how to navigate fame once the project of losing weight is complete. With Tammy's declaration that she wants to speak no filters, no obligations. Just Tammy serving as both a mission statement and a warning to viewers who might expect her to play the same role forever, because she has made it clear she is not willing to be trapped in the image that once defined her. And that honesty, raw, uncomfortable, defiant, is perhaps why her story continues to resonate more powerfully than many other reality stars who fade into irrelevance once their initial arc concludes. And so, as fans wait for official announcements, it seems clear from Tammy's own words and the reaction of viewers that 1000 LB Sisters is not over but entering a new phase. One where the triumphs and tensions of its most compelling star will continue to unfold. Not as a caricature, but as a reminder of the human behind the headlines. A woman who has carried both the literal and figurative weight of the world, and who, in finally putting her voice first, may discover that her greatest season is yet to come.
I can't believe what they did. Living next to Chris and Brittany.
There were dark, empty months when fighting felt useless. Months where Tammy Slaton sat in silence, binge-watching her own episodes with the volume turned down low, as if muting the sound would soften the sting of her own image staring back at her from the television screen. Months when she would wince at her reflection, not only in the mirror, but in the curated, carefully edited moments shown to millions. Moments that made her both a symbol of hope and an object of ridicule. And in those long, gray stretches of time, she cried because she recognized the pain behind the smiles she forced. The desperate wanting to be more than just a number on a scale. The yearning to be more than a storyline for ratings. And yet, even in that despair, something inside her shifted, almost imperceptibly at first, through the gentle accumulation of small rituals therapy sessions, where she spoke words that felt jagged and heavy but necessary. Phone calls with family that reminded her she was still loved beyond the spectacle of reality TV. Music that wrapped around her in the stillness of the night, and quiet mornings by the window when the sky bled pink across the horizon and she realized that time was still moving, that she was still breathing, and that perhaps there was still room for hope. And in those slivers of peace, she began to rediscover fragments of herself. She started writing again, not captions crafted for social media or scripts rehearsed for the camera, but messy, honest prose that spilled out like blood onto the page. Words written not for approval but for survival. And in that act of creation, she felt the first stirrings of belief that she could live for herself. Not for ratings, not for clicks, not for whispers on the internet, but for the messy, imperfect woman inside her who had survived so much already. So, when the call came about filming a new season, her first instinct was to say no, to protect the fragile flame she had just rekindled, because she feared that the cameras would once again extinguish her. reduce her to edits and sound bites and statistics. But then she realized that if she walked away in silence, the silence itself would become a breeding ground for rumors, for fake news, for distorted narratives that others would shape about her life without her input. And so she chose to face the camera again, but this time on her own terms, determined to reclaim the power she had lost. And what changed this season was not the number on a scale or the dramatic twists of a plotline, but the simple act of establishing boundaries. Boundaries that became her allies rather than her weaknesses. Rules she set before filming that she insisted on being respected. No scenes when she felt emotionally raw to the point of collapse. No invasion of her most private moments when she needed sanctuary. No forcing her to perform vulnerability for the sake of drama. And to her surprise, the film crew respected those boundaries. And in that respect, she rediscovered a sense of control she had long believed was gone. And alongside those boundaries, she insisted on real goals, not manufactured arcs created for television. So when producers asked her, "What's your arc this season?" she refused to give them numbers or wins or crash diet promises, and instead said, "I want to feel peace. I want to love myself enough that a scale can't measure me." A response that startled them, but also redefined the very purpose of her journey, and with that came a renewed focus on self-care. But not the shallow self-care of bubble baths and junk food or skipping therapy under the guise of treating herself, but the life or death version of self-care that meant reaching out when destructive cycles whispered in her ear, confessing when she slipped instead of hiding in shame, attending therapy not for show but for survival, and learning to recognize when her spirit needed tending, even if her body still carried scars. And part of that healing came from connecting honestly, not just with the audience, but with her sister Amy. Conversations stripped of the surface-level chatter and performed sisterly banter the cameras often demanded, replaced instead with raw exchanges about their childhood, their deepest fears, and regrets that had festered in silence. Conversations where unscripted tears fell, and the cameras, for once, captured not reality TV, but reality itself. And Tammy knew that people would still watch and whisper, still judge, still point at moments of struggle, saying, "She's still gaining, she's still failing." But this season, she embraced the truth that recovery is not linear. That pain revisits as often as hope, and yet that persistence to continue is itself the measure of strength. And so, her truth became simple but defiant. She is still here, still fighting, still discovering that even if her body doesn't shrink overnight, her spirit can soar, and she is learning to measure progress not by pounds shed, but by burdens lifted. Choosing compassion for herself in places where shame once took root, shedding that shame season by season, whether in therapy rooms where she laid her trauma bare, in confessions whispered to her therapist, or in late-night prayers to a God she wasn't sure was still listening, but who nonetheless received her broken words. And what she wished people understood most were the unseen moments. The night she cried for 3 hours after filming a scale, shot not out of embarrassment at her weight, but from despair that the cameras seemed to hold more power over her life than she did. The moment in physical therapy when she took one shaky step and then another, each one feeling like a chain breaking around her ankles. The night she hugged her mother and whispered, "Mom, I'm scared they'll edit me wrong," only to hear her mother reassured her, "No, honey, they'll show them you." And this season for Tammy became about more than weight, because she began working on something bigger. A book not about diets or workouts, but about survival. A collection of stories and letters addressed to herself and to every girl who has ever felt she wasn't enough, who cried on bathroom floors thinking the world had no place for her. And though Tammy doesn't know if the book will ever be published, it doesn't matter, because the act of writing itself is healing. A way of honoring the version of herself who once believed she had no future. And alongside writing, she picked up sketching, doodling images of her dreams, of boats that symbolized freedom, of beaches where her body felt light, of open skies, where her only weight was joy, rediscovering art not as a performance but as a private sanctuary. And through this, she began to rebuild not just her body, but her sense of self, learning that identity was not tied to numbers or edits, but to the quiet truths she claimed when no one else was watching. And though the world will continue to speculate about her weight, about her future, about the next season of her life, Tammy has made it clear that this time the story will not be written for her, but by her. And perhaps that is the real arc of season 8 and beyond. Not the shrinking of her body, but the expansion of her spirit.